Welcome, welcome, welcome to this edition of Sagionic 1027. We are so glad that you decided to join us today, and I'm very anxious to introduce you to our special guest. Before I introduce you to our guest, I'd like to share a little bit about why. What is Sagionic 1027 anyways? Well, let's think of this for a moment. Sagionic means movement by movement in time. Sagion means wisdom carrier. So our desire here at Sagionic 1027 is how do we take, got to have a visual, how do we take the minds of those who have functioned in wisdom, who have had a business mindset, who have walked out, whoops, that didn't work. Oh, let's try this instead, right? Walk this out. How do we take what they have learned and tape it to the walls of your mind? That's good. That was good. Tape it to the walls of your mind. So with that being said, I don't think you could get much more creative, which I know there's people out there, but our very dear blessed guest before us, and all of the fans would say, how did she get an interview with her? It's called favor, is Collette Cameron, and she is an established author and now authoring 52 books. I'm going to read a little bit about Collette, and I'm very proud. I know her personally. Beautiful, beautiful woman inside out. A lady's lady. She's like the ladies of all ladies, and she just exuberates with class. Very classy lady. So I'd like to share a little bit about her. She is a USA Today selling award-winning author. She scribbles Scottish and Regency historical romance novels featuring dashing rogues, rakes, and scoundrels, and the strong heroine who reform them. Blessed with the overactive and witty muse that won't stop whispering new romantic romps in her ear. She's lived in Oregon her entire life, although she dreams of living in Scotland part-time. A confessed Cadbury chocoholic, you'll always find a dash of inspiration and a pinch of humor in her sweet and spicy, timeless romances. And so with that, Collette Cameron, we welcome you today. And we would just like to have a conversation today to share with your viewers a little bit about who is this Collette Cameron? What is she doing and how did she do it? So
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a journey of about, let's see, I actually started writing my very first book in February of 2011. And then this many years later, it's actually 54 published books. Another one comes out Wednesday and another one in January. So it'll be 56. So it's a very busy life, but a very blessed life.
So go back to that first initial when you started, because it wasn't in 2011 that you woke up one day and said, I'm going to write a book.
No, it wasn't. I've always been a prolific reader. I love to read. I have since I was very small. It kind of, petered out a bit when I was a busy mama of 3 kids and all that, but I still reading. I love to read. And I always kind of thought maybe someday I might write a book. But romance was not on my radar ever. Self-help book. I mean, I wasn't even sure, but someday maybe I'd write a book. 2 things happened to kind of launch me into the writing world. My youngest child went off to college, and I had a bad case of empty nest syndrome, and I had just gotten my master's in teaching. So he went off to college in September. I had gotten my master's in teaching the May before that. I was substituting, but I wasn't working full-time again. And I had attended a church service here in a little town, and the pastor was talking about going outside the box to reach not just believers, but non-believers. And initially my writing was all geared towards non-believers. So those 2 things, or 3 things actually, kind of came to a head. And in February, I just, after battling with the Lord for 6 months, because I said, I'm not writing a romance novel. I'm not doing it. I'm not, God, do you know what people think about romance writers? Lord, there's a stigma that goes with that. And I teach. I can't write romance. But, as anybody will tell you who's had an argument with God, mine went on for 6 months. He won eventually because he put an idea in my head that wouldn't go away. And it went round and around and around. And it was a specific scene that is in my very first book. And so I finally said, okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to see if I can write a book based on this scene. And I did. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had read for years and years, decades, but I had never written a book. And it was a monstrosity. It was 156,000 words long. And I changed the title 3 times. I rewrote it 2 times. First time after submitting to publishers, and they said, no, thank you. And then the second time after entering a bunch of contests and getting a bunch of feedback. Some positive, contests are great for getting feedback if you really want to advance yourself in the writing world and become a better writer, which every writer should, in my opinion, strive to do. Is with every book, you should be a little bit better. So started writing that in February 2011, submitted it to, after rewriting it twice, cutting it down to about 90,000 words, to a small press. That would have been, spring of 2012. And within 4 days, I had an email to send a full manuscript. And then within 4 days, I was offered a contract for that particular book, which is now titled The Highlander's Heiress. And from there, it just kind of took off. And now I write constantly. I'm doing something every day. I did 9 books with that publisher. I did 9 books with another small press. I have done lots of independently published, self-published, what they call a hybrid. So a small press, and then self-published. And then I'm negotiating a contract right now with a publisher for 2024, because I'm completely booked through 2023 and most of 2024. So when I say booked, that means writing scheduled out.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. So how do you keep your mind in a space of creative, active imagination to develop new characters?
Well, you should see, I have what I call a series Bible. I actually have a series Bible for each series, and I have an idea Bible, not to be confused with the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
Small b, not capital B,
Okay.
where I'm constantly writing down ideas. I have more ideas right now than I probably will ever be able to write in my lifetime for different series, different characters, different storylines. So for me, that hasn't been a problem. The biggest problem I've had is I don't write fast enough to get everything out as quickly as I'd like to. And I'm a prolific writer. As I said, 56 books in not quite 10 years since the first book was published in 2013. But I don't write, 10,000 or 15,000 words a day. And I average between 2,000 to 3,000 words a day, sometimes up to 5,000. But that's as much as my little brain can handle. And then the characters kind of develop themselves. I'm a character-driven writer, not a plot-driven. I'm also a pantser. I don't plot out my books way in advance. I have ideas. I have certain points I want to hit, but I don't know the whole story ahead of time. And as I'm writing, the Holy Spirit just speaks it into me. And sometimes I'll go a completely different direction. Sometimes I'll have a problem I need to solve, and I'll just wait. And after a day or two, the answer will come to me, and then I go and I fix it in the story.
Kind of like I see, I don't want to say a snowball effect, but if you're on an edge and you begin to slip, you're not necessarily in control of where exactly you're going to slip going down this rocky terrain. Okay. So that's what I saw when you were talking about it, that you just start and you begin a process, and then you just kind of move and navigate through it. So you, in essence, become the reader as well when you're developing this.
Yeah, it's interesting too that I will go back and read books I've written for various reasons. If I'm adding another book in a series, and I've had my longest series right now is 15 books. And so what happened back in book 1 and 2, I'm kind of oblivious. I know the characters' names, but details. And I'll go back and I'll read some of those things. And I'm like, I don't remember writing this. I know I did, but I don't remember writing this, because there's so many characters in my mind now, and so many scenes and events. And but like you said, when I start writing the series I've just started, I have a Christmas novella releasing on Wednesday. that one I had to spend a lot more time not plotting, but putting together a family tree and organizing it, because it's going to be a very, very long series. And I had to be super organized. So I know more about those characters.
Okay.
Initially, I used to interview my characters. I would have 50 questions that I would fill out for them. And I would, for my main characters, my hero and my heroine. So I knew everything about them.
Okay.
And that was probably for like the first 20 books. But now I've written so many, that's kind of an intuitive thing for me now.
Got you.
I know what things that the readers need to know about them, so I have to write it down like I used to, although I still make notes. And I do, like I said, I have a Bible for each story, so I keep information straight, so that my hero doesn't have two different colors of eyes or those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And as I'm writing, I've tried plotting. I've
Okay.
tried doing, there's books out there that you can get that tell you the different, beats you have to hit. And I've tried that. It doesn't work for me, because I'll do, I'll be great the first 1 or 2, 3 chapters, because I usually know how my story is going to start, and I, kind of know how it's going to end. It's just all that stuff in between.
Yeah.
And my characters will take me off a different direction. So then all that work I spent plotting, it's gone. And my plotter friends are like, well, you should never let that happen. You should always stick to the plot. Well, that doesn't work for me. So we're all different. And I'm a linear pantser. So I write from beginning to end. I don't just write chapters and then fit them in. I write from beginning to end, with rare exceptions. Sometimes I'll go back and I'll add something that needs to be clarified. But I'm not just writing a chapter and then fitting it in somewhere. And I have friends that do that too. They just literally write scenes and then they put that together and make a book.
Yeah. So it made me think of something, and I thought, because I like to just kind of like go with the flow. I don't like to be scripted. It's I like to just engage in the moment and see where we're going to go with it, right? So this thought just popped into my brain, so I'm going to share it, and you're not going to gasp, right? So here's a thought that just came to me. If we just think of creativity, okay, and we think of the female in her creativeness, for goodness sakes, babies are grown inside of us, right? Human beings, other human beings are grown inside of us, right? And we don't articulate how that human being is going to be grown. And yet we're used for that human being to be grown inside of us, okay? So with that creative nature, I've been married twice. And with both of my husbands, I remember asking the Lord, could you put creative ways inside of my mind to singular seduce my husband? Seduce not in a bad way, but in a good way, right? Put some creative thoughts in my mind. And when the Lord did, I remember my first husband said, where did you get that idea from? Did you do that with another boyfriend? And I'm thinking, I've only been with you. I haven't been with anybody else. I've only been with you, right? And I said to him, I actually asked the Lord, would he put some thoughts in my mind? So if you think of okay, let's just look at creation. Let's look at the brilliance of a fall leaf. They are breathtaking. They're always changing, and yet they're leaves, but they're not all the same, right? Some have more vibrant colors, some are more deeper, like vintage wine red looking. They're all just a variety of colors, and yet all are pleasing to the eye. Well, then we could turn that into women, right? Women, and so how could you encourage? Because correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong here. The ideal of reading a book, to just read a book and walk away from a book and not gain anything from it, except for to escape to a different realm, would almost seem to be futile. So when you're writing your books, what is your goal besides swifting somebody away? What's your driving force to help the viewers? I don't even know if the help is the correct word. So what's your compelling force?
Well, I think what you're asking me is, when I'm writing, is there a specific purpose that I'm hoping that my readers will see, that they'll gain something?
Exactly.
And the answer to that is no. Sorry. Yes, I want them to, as you said, escape to another realm. I'm hoping to bring them some stress-free time, some time to relax, some time to, because life for a lot of people is really hard.
Yeah.
And their time of just their me time is limited. Their time to be a little bit selfish and read is limited. My books do have, there is an underlining inspirational theme to all of them.
Okay.
It's more overt in some than others, but it is in all my books, from my very first ones, which tended to be a little bit spicier, to the ones I write now, which are very much sweet and clean. I have a Christian series, but throughout those, I suppose if there is anything, it is an underlying theme of, love, forgiveness, of course, is very big in all my books, loyalty, and then, some of them more than others, but a definite reliance on God the Father, but not in a preachy kind of way at
Well, yeah.
all. So, there's not like a social agenda to any of my books, because they're
Okay.
historical. They're written, the most recent ones are 200 years ago. I have some going back 350 years. So it's a completely different customs, time, life. Things are different. And so I try really hard not to bring modern issues into my historical books.
Gotcha.
And I've done a lot of polling of my readers, questioning my readers, and they want that. They don't want to have to deal with modern issues in the historicals. You'll see more of that in contemporaries. You'll see more of that in women's fiction. And sometimes there's readers that specifically want to read that type of thing. My readers don't.
Yeah.
They choose historical because they don't want to have to deal with modern stuff.
Yeah.
And we know there's lots
Yeah.
of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good, Collette. Because if we just think of one of the gals that I interviewed, her name is Casey Birch. Okay, and she said if she ever moves forward in a situation, the second she comes up against dis-ease, she stops, she pulls herself back and finds that place of peace or relaxation or calmness, right? Before she goes out. And if we think of, the human need to retreat and not just be, we're not drones or robots, right? So I really respect what you're doing. You're giving people an outlet from real life, an outlet to, why do we have movies that are created, for goodness sakes? We have the Hallmark Channel that's created, so because I'm one who likes to not just stay right here in the moment, but go, have you had a desire to have one of your books on Hallmark?
Actually, Hallmark has a publishing house. And yeah, that's
Oh,
not something that's off the radar someday, especially with the new type of genre that I'm moving into. That maybe someday I do watch the Hallmark Channel, and yeah, there is a predictive script with those types of movies and books, is
okay,
because they know what works and what doesn't, and they know
okay,
what their viewers like, and they know what their
okay,
readers like, and that can
okay,
be a complaint sometimes in books too, is that it's all there is nothing new. Nothing's
okay,
written.
okay,
Everything's always been written before, but what twist can you put on it? How can you make it unique? How can you make it yours?
okay.
And so your voice is the voice that readers learn to understand. But yeah, I mean, I have a contemporary series that I'm going to be starting in 2023, actually, and that's going to be more, not necessarily Hallmarky,
Okay.
but a little bit more like that than any of my historicals would have been.
Okay, so now watch the beauty of virtual reality. I'm going to take my mouse, I'm going to touch it, I'm going to go like this, go down like this, I'm going to select it all, and I'm going to erase what I just said. I'm going to cut it, and let me tell you why. It's while you began to talk to respond to my question that I asked you, it changed. Look at Chip and Joanne. Chip and Joanne started their own channel. They started their own network. Okay? So if we think of outside the box, outside the traditional channels, they keep expanding. Everything just keeps expanding, right? You
Yeah.
have, I don't want to name names, but there's tons of expansion that is continuing to happen. And so, I'm gonna water that seed. I'm gonna water that
Yeah.
seed.
Yeah.
Collette Cameron, her own network.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Or,
Yeah.
an affiliation of other like-minded people who want to do, have the same goals and desires. And the driving force that I have, what motivates me, everything that I do is, of course, motivated by Holy Spirit.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't necessarily come through in all of my books, but that is what is driving me, and trying to be obedient to what God has given me to do. It's a ministry for me. This, the writing and whatever else it takes me, it's a ministry. And there's been lots of really, really fun, wonderful things. I have met so many incredible readers and other authors that, it's far more of a blessing for me than it is when I write the book and I put it out there, and then somebody else, I get emails, oh, thank you for writing, keep writing, I so appreciate you, and then they'll share hard things happening in their life. But I'm blessed far more, I think anyway, than those who I'm blessing through my writing, which is inspired, like I said, by God, because I don't remember what I write sometimes. When I go back and I read a book later, I'm like, oh,
Uh-huh.
I wrote that, okay.
That's great. So, can you tell viewers, because I'm a friend of yours, I know of Colette's, the human behind Collette.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell viewers a little bit about the fun stuff that takes place in your world with balls and tea parties, and
Oh, sure.
tell people who don't know about these things?
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
well, because
because
just like you have the reenactment of the Civil War, right? You have these kind of avenues. Tell people about what kind of things go on in your world.
Sure. In Because I'm writing historical, specifically Regency and Scottish. So my Highlander series, I have some that go back into the early 1700s. I don't do medieval or ancient history, but just pretty much from 1700s to right now the mid 1800s. And I love history anyway, and I love dressing up. So there's fun things available for historical romance fans. There is a conference that's specifically for romance readers, and they have, excuse me, my dog's howling. I hope you can't hear him. Poor little guy. So they have high teas and they have balls, and you sign up for the conference to get to go and interact with cover models and authors. The whole idea is that you have a chance to interact with your favorite historical romance authors, and they come from all over the place: New Zealand, the UK, Canada, some places I don't even know the names of, because there's one gal who comes from an island that I never can remember the name of it. Anyway, there's those kinds of things, but there's also all kinds of things for readers, groups and stuff, for instance, on Facebook, where it's geared towards historical romance. And then there's, even in that, it's broken down: Regency romance, Highlander romance, Christian historical romance. So there's all kinds of ways that readers can find new friends too. We live in a time of a lot of people are isolated. I think it's an epidemic of isolation, particularly for the elderly and the disabled, where sometimes the only contact they have is through social media. And so having these groups where they can connect with other people, in my reader group, people know that they can put in prayer requests, and I will pray for them. And I will, they can message me if they need something, and a family issue or a health issue, whatever, because they know that I'll pray for them. That's just a small part of my ministry. I don't make that everything that I'm about, but they know
Yeah,
that I'm a believer,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I've never been apologetic about that.
Uh-huh.
It is who I am.
So, how have you withstood voices, without giving names, that have come against you under the umbrella of terminologies I don't like religiosity, churchology? How have you stood up against those in through a judgmental perspective over here? They could say, and you call yourself a Christian.
Hmm.
How have you stood up against
Yeah.
that?
Well,
I mean,
I
because this
have.
is 54 books, for goodness sakes.
Well, I have experienced that um, from different perspectives. So, for instance, when I was still teaching, I wanted to be very aware that my students, not that I don't write erotica or anything like
Uh-huh,
that,
uh-huh.
but still historical romance. Just the word romance, some people jump to conclusions, and so I want to protect my students against that. There were I think of one person in particular, but there were people who were not necessarily kind, in that environment. One person made a point of every time he saw me in the hallway asking how my smut writing was going, and to the extent
Oh.
that it became harassment. But I just would always say to him, "You're not my intended audience. You're not my intended audience." In a bigger picture, there are. I'm careful how I say this. For the most part, people in the genres I write are extremely kind, generous. They were just wonderful people in every single occupation. Whether it's like I was teaching or whether it's in something else, maybe more mainstream, there's going to be people who dislike you just because of what you stand for. I have never, ever, as an author, been what I call preachy, or self-righteous, or judgmental. That's not my place. I was called to write books that have inspiration in them to bless my readers. It wasn't a thing about the authors. And then there was the other piece of it. As a churchgoer, there were and still are those who, and then they've never read one of my books, by the way.
Yeah.
These people never read one of my books.
Okay.
It's I don't want to say they judge me or disapprove.
Presumptuous.
Well, they just I just say they have a lack of understanding. And I've asked a couple people, have you ever read one of my books? If you have read one of my books, you would know that your preconceived notions are inaccurate. But, in one case, one person said, well, I just never read romance. And I'm like, well, then you really don't have a voice to stand. It's kind of like the person never votes and always has an opinion. So it's like, well, then you don't have a voice. I'm sorry. And if you're not my intended audience, then you don't have a voice either. So, and again, it goes back to, what is my motivation for doing this? Is it for self-glorification? Is it to get attention? Is it to be, to hit lists and stuff? I'm fortunate. I have hit the USAT bestseller list several, well, I shouldn't say several times, more than once. I think it's 4 times. You can tell I don't really pay attention to that. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because I've been given a gift, and I love to write, and I love to connect with my readers, and I like to bring joy, no matter how small, no matter how temporary it is, to somebody else. And that's why I continue to write. I don't know when I'm going to stop, if I ever will. When God tells me, I guess, and He hasn't done it yet.
That's really good, because if we think of it, when you were communicating, a visual popped up in my brain, and it's like, where have you, Collette Cameron, chosen to hang your lab coat? Okay. Are you going to hang your lab coat outside of the laboratory, where you're going to go in and get a bunch of critics, or are you going to and continue to subject yourself, or are you going to hang your lab coat over a laboratory that you go inside of, and everybody's eager to be able to interact with that creativity? Okay. Because it's beautiful what you're doing for the bigger picture. Because if we think of the bigger picture being love, anywhere in life, the bigger picture anywhere in life is love. Love compels people towards action. It does. It compels you towards action. And whatever that may be, if you are not finding enjoyment, if you are not experiencing interrelational, whether it be cordial love or the purity of friendship love, if you're not experiencing that, then for what? It would become something mundane. So to hear, Collette, how you've chosen to be interactive through responding, through Facebook or email, not Facebook, through your website or through email with your readers, you become real. You become real to them. And that's beautiful and admirable. So it's not just I'm going to do this, and now I just want to receive this.
Mm-hmm.
It's interactive.
And we live in a time now where that's more accessible. It's more, interaction with readers is more available. Even 50 years ago, before we had all the social media that we have now, it would have been harder to establish relationships with them. That's a huge benefit of where the times that we live in. There are drawbacks, of course, too. And one of the things I've told other people who are aspiring authors, especially with their first or second book, you really have to get tough, thick-skinned. You just have to, because there are going to be people that hate your work. They just do. They're, and they're entitled to dislike your work. I mean, we live in a time and a place where we're entitled to freedom of speech. So someone wants to give me a negative review, they can do that. But there's enough people who are positive that you focus on the positive. You don't need to dwell on the negative. It's always going to be there. There's not an author alive that doesn't have some negative reviews. And that's just the way it is. So I choose to focus on the positives of it. I won't deny the fact that there's times it's very stressful. When there's a deadline and I don't have the book ready, or I'm trying to get it through edits, or there's, a lot of things will come together at one time. There may be family issues or something, but it all comes down to, I love what I do. I have the ability to be creative in a way that I had never dreamed of. A lot of authors will tell you that they knew from the time they were a small child that they were going to be a writer. That wasn't the case for me. I could always write. Writing came easy, school projects, college, that kind of stuff. I wrote some really awful poetry when I was a teenager. I was just thinking of that last night. I wrote a poem for my cousin's little boy when he was born, and she was gracious and kept that thing out framed for a while. But I'm like, oh, that was so bad. So bad. But I love what I do. And so it's, I work almost every day, but it doesn't feel like work because it's being able to be creative. I'm going to launch into a new book today, and in the back of my mind for about a week and a half now, just different things about the story have been kind of percolating and kind of priming the pump, so to speak, before I jump in and start writing it. And this one I have to write really, really fast just because of some deadline things. And it's the last book in a series. So that's always kind of sad too, is when a last book, it's wrapping things up, but then I'm really eager about the new series I just launched. So, and people always ask me, or frequently ask me, is there a character you like more than others? Have you based characters on people? I don't really have a favorite character. I think the one I'm writing at the time are my favorites, and I have never deliberately based a character on people, although afterwards, hindsight, I'm like, oh, that's a lot like so-and-so. No one will ever know, but that kind of was, or someone say to me, that sounds a lot like, whoever, like, no, that really, no. If you think that's not the way it was. But I'm kind of protected because my readership is not my friends and family. My readership is mostly people that have come through reading my books. I'm finding it on vendors. So I don't really have a lot of people close to me saying, well, that sounds like this person. That sounds like that person. No, I don't have to worry about that. Although I have to confess, I have written 4 people into books who were unkind to me. And so I made them the villains in the books. And then at the end, they redeemed themselves, and they were, So there's my confession for you. And also, you never know when an author is around you, and we listen to things all the time because we get ideas. Everything gives us ideas. I carry a notepad in my purse and in my car, and my family will tell you I am always writing things down. Names. I'll be in a store and I'll hear a phrase and I'll go, I really like that. And I'll write it down. And I have a shirt that says, be careful what you say because it might end up in my novel. It might. So just there's a warning.
I love it. Oh gosh, that's hilarious. So
yeah, and I've heard some really funny things. I've heard some beautiful phrases, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I could write a book about that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is great. I was thinking about how even, just living real life, right? Living real life and giving the people the outlet, right? But with life, and thinking outside the box, like you said, right? I'm reminded within the last week, we'll say, Okay. I was in a, as a parent, I have 6 grown kids, and my
Mm-hmm.
husband and I were engaging in conversation with one of them. We're just talking about relationships, right? Just the building of relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and how, through that, because you've had to navigate through relationships to create relationships
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in your books. You have.
Mm-hmm.
You've taken this over here, not pay Peter to pay Paul, whatever that one is. It's Rob from Peter to pay Paul. But
Right,
in
right.
essence, you've taken this
Mm-hmm.
situation to bring this situation. And
Mm-hmm.
I shared with one of our adult children that, gosh, relationships are all about learning how to navigate, not perfection, right? But learning
Mm-hmm.
how to navigate. And when there's a whoops, right? Whether it be through verbal, written, text, whatever, right? Then how do you come back with grace?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
share with our viewers how you've had to learn to bestow grace upon yourself.
Give myself permission to have some downtime. That would be the big thing, some time to relax, because as I
Okay.
said, I'm always busy with this profession. The writing piece of it is only one small piece of it. There's a lot more that goes into the any author will tell you, and um, that can be very time consuming. But I think too, the writing process is very cathartic. You can you work through things sometimes in a book that might be going on in your real life. It's not necessarily that you're in therapy through the story. We sort of kind of are, but it is a way of, I've characters redeeming themselves, forgiving themselves. I do lots of enemies to lovers, second chance romances, which again goes back to life and relationships. It's always going to be bumpy. It's,
Mm-hmm.
rarely is there a smooth road forever. No matter how much somebody is in love, no matter how well they communicate, there are going to be some bumps. And so in the stories, I cover some of those things. And of course, mine always had the happy ever after. That's just part of what my readers expect, is that they want that ending. But I think I have learned also, in my personal relationships, um, to be a little bit more temperate in speaking. I write these characters who are really good at, listening and communicating and understanding, and they work out these, and the heroines are intrepid and they don't take offense, and and it's like, well, real life is a
Yeah.
whole different thing. So I think in that respect, it's been, maybe I've grown as a person. I hope I have. As I said, I hope that every book is better. I hope that I'm growing as a person, that my writing is helping me do that. And I hope too that the little tidbits of maybe wisdom that are in my stories, that helps other people in some small way. Maybe they read a phrase that really speaks to them, or is healing, or I mean, I don't know, I don't write with the purpose of this is going to happen, but
Yeah.
because of the emails and the things that I hear back from my readers, I know that it is touching them. And again, that's a gifting.
Yeah.
So I guess back to what your original question was, um, there is no formula.
Uh-huh.
As you know, with
Yeah.
relationships, you're navigating, and sort of the same thing when I'm writing. I'm navigating through these relationships, and some are going to turn out this way, some are going to turn out this way. Not every character, secondary character, gets redeemed,
Uh-huh.
because that's real life. Not
Yeah.
everybody in real life
Absolutely.
is someone that's going to be your best friend.
Absolutely. You know, there was a situation that occurred within the last 6 months, and something was shared, and when it was shared, it was it was perceived a different way. And so in my mind, it kind of like sat with, it kind of like ate my lunch, right?
Mm,
And then after I had thought about it, then the thought came, wait a minute, this other person who said something, they don't have authority over your own mind.
mm-mm,
So how you choose to walk something out, and
mhm.
it's your choice, right? So then within 24 hours of this moment, I'm in Showerland, and I was thinking, should I go back and re-explain it to this person over here, what I really meant, because this person over here made it sound like this, and then
Mm,
it was kind of like, well, for goodness sake, Shawn, you're not going to be able to go around to everybody in the world and try to explain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so for
Mm-hmm.
you, knowing, okay, you are writing to a set of audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your particular talent and gift does not have to match up with everybody in the entire
No,
world. You don't have to.
no.
And so can you tell us the importance of staying in the realm of this is who I am and I've chosen
Mm-hmm.
to flow with who I am?
Mm-hmm. Well, each author develops their own voice, and the
Okay?
longer you've been writing, the more confident and strong you become in that voice. And I'm at a point now where I'm pretty sure of who I am and what I want to say and how I convey that to my readers. And they've become accustomed to my writing style. They'll say the same kinds of things to me. I tend to be funny and witty um, and uh, just different things that they've come to recognize are unique to me. That being said, there are times with any book, I believe, where you will have written something that will trigger somebody. And I'm not talking about a big trigger types of thing where
Yeah.
maybe they're, uh, I don't write rape. Most publishers won't publish rape. I don't
Yeah.
have any of that kind of stuff in my book.
Yeah.
That's a trigger. But
Yeah.
sometimes a very small, subtle thing that you,
Mm.
very innocuous, very innocent, will trigger somebody. You can't do anything about that. Some books
Mm.
that have some very tough subject matter, an author will put a statement at the beginning of the book warning readers that this might be in it. My books don't have that kind of thing in them.
Mm.
But having said that, I have had people respond to particular things in different books in a way that was like, oh, well, that's not what that meant. That's how you perceived it. You're unique in that perception.
Mm.
Very
Mm.
few, if anybody else, perceived that. And that was, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can't prevent everybody from, like in your case, thinking something one way or perceiving something one way. Even amongst my reviewers, I have a set of reviewers that get advanced reader copies. Even amongst them, some of them will come back with a completely different interpretation of a particular scene. And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so then sometimes you have to look at that and go, do I need to fix that? But most of the time anymore, it's no, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to adapt my writing style for a small percentage of my audience, and they're probably not really my audience. It might be someone that's picked up my book by chance, or
Uh-huh.
it was recommended to them.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty strict with my writing style, to the point that there has been some discussion in the last few years about, I'm adamant to be as historically accurate as I can. I do a
Okay.
tremendous amount of research. It's still fiction. So there's
Yeah.
going to be elements that are not, that you wouldn't have seen in, the 1700s, the
Yeah.
1800s, but I'm not talking about telephones or things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I will not adapt my historical romances to fit current cultural norms. So there are people who want that to happen, and I won't do it. Most of the authors I know won't do it. We're not going to change verbiage. We're not going to
Mm-hmm.
change events so that it soothes those who want to see things a certain way. I
Uh-huh.
have to be historically accurate. And in order to do that, I'm going to write what happened during that time period. And let's face it, some things were very unjust, and some things were very
Mm.
maybe perhaps offensive. We wouldn't do that today, but that's what it was like
Mm-hmm.
back then. And I'm not talking about big events. I'm just talking about, for instance, the way men treated women. Women had very few rights back then. I do
Mm-hmm.
write intrepid heroines who
Mm-hmm.
are striving to have more rights, who are striving to have their voice heard. But the truth is, back then it was very limited what they were allowed to do. A woman could not get a divorce. A man could, but a woman couldn't, unless you lived in Scotland. Lived in Scotland, you could get a divorce. Yeah, and I've used that in a couple of them. So just little things like that. So my voice, I'm very confident in my voice anymore. To the point, when I first started writing, I was told, don't ever read another author's book while you're writing, because you'll take on their voice. That
Okay.
hasn't been something that's happened to me. But I understand how it could happen. Because when I first started writing my very first book, I found myself talking like my heroine. And I'm like, wait a minute. What is happening here? Because it was in my head.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen anymore, but it did. And
Yeah.
because she was in my head all the time. It's like, oh no, I can't be doing that.
Okay. So how would you encourage, okay, because you said that your readers aren't necessarily your relatives, okay?
Right.
So how do you encourage someone to walk out the repetitious thoughts that are wandering in one's mind? Not wandering, I don't want to use wandering. That keep resurfacing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
How do they walk out through a dream or a vision?
Mm-hmm.
These repetitious now I'm not thinking murderous thoughts, okay? So I'm not, that's not the avenue I'm
Right.
going. But how do you encourage them to rise up, to walk out what's within them without thinking you need to go through this whole list of every relative and sisters, cousins, brothers, aunts, uncles, to just have the freedom to be oneself?
Well, I think it all comes back to prayerfully asking God, daily, if necessary, what is my purpose and what is my destiny? For me, I don't want to miss my purpose and my destiny, what's past, what's future at all. And that's why I will keep writing until God takes me a different direction. And also reaching that point of, especially people pleasers, because I tend to be a people pleaser. It's really hard. Not sacrificing what your dreams and desires are because someone else thinks you should be going a different direction, or they don't understand what you're doing, or it has no value for them. So it's kind of it's a delicate balancing game. You don't want to offend, you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but if God's called you to do something and you really believe that, then you need to continually, through prayer, press in and walk that out and be respectful. Like for me, like I say, I have a couple relatives who have read some of my books,
Okay.
but they're not out buying them the minute they release. They're not subscribing to my newsletter. They're not part of my reader group. They just, for whatever reason, it's no interest in them. You can't force somebody to like the genre that I write.
Yeah.
Just like you can't force somebody to be involved in something else. So for people, that dreams are different. I have an uncle who's an artist, a tremendously successful artist. There's very successful musicians in my family. I can't hardly draw. When I was doing my master's program and had to do this drawing class for educators, it was painful. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. It was painful. I still remember my first grade teacher. That was many, many, many years ago, making fun of my stick people. That's how bad of an artist I am. Drawing is not I can, but it's not a talent. So I guess to encourage somebody, you have a dream. I never dreamed that I would have written this many books and will continue to write books. But if it's God ordained and if his hand is upon it, he's going to bring people into your life. They're going to encourage you. They're going to mentor you, that will guide you. You have to be willing to listen and to learn. There's a very steep writing or learning curve, because once you decide to do it, there's a whole bunch of things you have to put in place if you want to become published. And we're not even go down that road, but it's not easy. It can be very stressful, but in my case, I knew it was something in my heart that I was not doing just for me. It was carrying out this ministry that I felt like the Lord had laid upon me. I've been very blessed. I've told that story many times where, the pastor said, go outside the box. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm going to do what God wants me to do. But anytime you're in a profession or a career choice, or you're doing something totally different, God shows you something totally different. I think that the best thing that you can do always, always, always is you've got to be, plugged into him and praying and listening. Not that he'll say something audibly, but when he's guiding you, so that you are staying where he wants you to be and not get off that. I mean, I've gone off a little bit, had this wobbly road, but still trying to move forward into that purpose and destiny that's preordained. It's written in the book of life in heaven. It's written up there what we're supposed to be doing. And so I claim that for myself. I claim it for my kids. I claim it for my future grandchildren. And who knows? I mean, I had no idea this is what I would be doing at my age. I should be retiring. That's not going to happen anytime
I
soon.
don't think retirement's in the BIBLE, just to let you
No,
know.
no.
I don't,
You
I
know
don't,
what? My daughter says that. She
yeah,
says it's nowhere in there it says that. So I'm like,
yeah,
I know.
it doesn't say it. You
Well,
know,
and we
and
just bought, and we don't have it yet. We'll get it
okay,
December 17th, a travel trailer. So now I'll be able to go all over the place because I can write anywhere and
anywhere,
anywhere.
anywhere.
And I have. I've written in Scotland, I've written in the UK, I've written in different conferences all over the United States. So yeah.
That's good. That's really good. You know, and I remember a couple of years ago, it was in 2017. Somebody had said, "Oh, Shawn, you think outside the box. You're way outside the box." I instantly saw an image of a liquid box, and it was
Hmm.
clear. It was clear. All the walls were clear. It was like a clear liquid, not glass. It was a clear liquid box, not an ice cube, but the
Hmm.
walls were made out of liquid. And as soon as I came into agreement with, I didn't want to be inside the box, I saw the liquid box melt.
Mm.
So it was like, not only did you come outside the box, you removed the box,
Mm-hmm.
just like removed
Mm-hmm.
it all together,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's I guarantee you that you are going to encourage not only writers but visionaries. How do you
Mm-hmm.
take your vision? How do you own it, right? How do you own it to own it, right? To not owe
Mm-hmm.
it, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get, 10, 20, 30 years down the line and think, "Oh my gosh, I wished I would have."
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you
Mm-hmm.
want to own it to own it. To
Mm-hmm.
just, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk this out. And I really like your heart for the bigger purpose of, because you're not wanting to place in the minds of readers doom and desolate.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is the end result is hope, but there's also life lessons in there. So really, Wendy, really, this is truly you confessing without realizing it. Your desire is to bless people. So
It is.
your
Mm-hmm.
under that's woven in there is hope, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate through relationships?
Mm-hmm.
Even though these are different characters, right? Even down to like developing a character and you having it in your lower BIBLE, right? The
Mm-hmm.
development of that character is because you are going to bring people back to, but let's go back to the character. What is it? What
Mm-hmm.
is the true character of this person? And you're teaching your readers to do the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of the terminology, give them the benefit of the doubt, you can say, but I know the character of that person, right? And the character of that person is beautiful. And so you're still a teacher at heart. It's just through
Yeah.
your romance
You
novels.
never stop being a teacher. I think once you become a teacher, you said something a little bit ago that stuck in my mind
Okay.
about I had a teacher friend say to me when I was contemplating going back to school and getting finishing my undergraduate and getting my master's degree, and she goes, "The time's going to pass whether you do it or not." She
That's
goes, "In
right.
3 or 4 years, you'll either have your degrees or you won't." And I have used that phrase so many times with my own children, even in starting the writing process. The time's going to pass whether I start writing a book or not. The time's going to pass. So there's so many things, and I just said this to one of my children probably last week.
Okay.
It's like, well, in 4 years, you could be here or you could be here. The time's going to go past no matter what. So, did you try? Is it, I think prayerfully always. You have to enter anytime you start anything prayerfully, but there is also a bit of just walking things out and
Yeah.
trusting that God will be there with you and that Holy Spirit will guide you. We can't be too timid or too shy. Or what's the story about them entering the land of all the giants and only
Yeah.
two
There was
were,
11 of them, 11 spies.
yeah, it
11
was,
spies.
yeah, yeah.
And
It was
only two came
Joshua,
back. Caleb.
Joshua and yeah,
Caleb.
Caleb. Yeah.
So I just, and I'm going to pull this in because it has to do with what you just said. I just interviewed somebody who has been to 63 nations,
Oh, wow.
and he shared, but he has a business mindset. So I need to find, hold on, flipping through this over here. That's okay, because this is one of those books that get lost. Oh, here he is. I had to find him. I want to read something out of Ecclesiastes because it fits into what you're sharing right now. It's Ecclesiastes 11:2. So it says, but divide your investment amongst many places, for you do not know what risks might lie ahead. And so think of not just being, okay, so the definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect different results, right? But if we think this, but divide your investments among many places, well, what's the most priceless thing we have? And I would say your mind. Your mind is the most valuable thing that you have, right? It says, but divide your investment. Oh, wait, hold on. Let's go back up because you've been to Scotland. This says,
I have.
So the subtitle of this is Uncertainties of Life. It says, send your grain across the seas, and in time, profits will flow back to you. Then it goes on to say, but divide your investment among many places, for you do not know what risks might lie ahead. When clouds are heavy, the rain comes down. Whether a tree falls north or south, it stays where it falls. So when you're walking out, you're using the creativeness of your mind, right? You don't have to just stay, like if we think of like a river and the fingers in a river, right? The fingers in the river are almost like the characters in your books, right? And the treasures that are within the different characters of your books. But the river would be the overall flow of your book, and yet it's all water. It's movement. It's movement. We have about another minute and a half. And so, you know, if you were to just say some bullet points to writers, and readers and viewers to help them to step into that creative realm, what would you share with them?
Oh, what would I share with them? You know, for readers or for writers, it's always write what you love, write what you know. And I think that's important. And I think it's important to surround yourself with people that are in the same place that you are. And you have to be careful with that, though. You want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a position of compromise. So that being said, you know, people around you who are in the same place that you are, again, seeking God every step of the way and not being afraid to take chances. We are built, I think, designed as humans to, I mean, look at all the things we've invented through God knowledge, God, Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit directing. So you don't be afraid. But at the same time, you have to be wise. So it's a balancing act. And give yourself the chance to mess up, because when you're learning something new, you're not going to be really good at it to start with. So you mess up, you get up, and you start again. You ever get rejected by a publisher? That's okay. You revise that book, you write something new, you try again. There's usually multiple publishers. You can self-publish, but make sure you're getting it edited. So, and also strive for the best that you can be. Don't settle for mediocre. Mediocrity can be the death of a dream, because the criticism that comes from that can just weigh you down. So strive to be the best that you can be. And that's a process too. It doesn't happen right away, but just keep improving and keep proving. I think God wants that from all of us. He wants to see us polished and shiny. Every day we're a little bit better. We're a little bit better. More a representation of Christ. At least I hope every day it's better. I can't promise that. There are some bad days.
That's really good. Well, we just really appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. And I will, when this is shared on a broader, spectrum with people, yep, I will wind up sharing the different links and how they can connect with you. But would you just like to verbally share your email address if people wanted to reach out to you?
Sure. You can contact me through my website, which is ColletteCameron.com. Collette's 2 L's, COLLETTE. And my email is Collette@ColetteCameron.com. That simple.
So good. Well, we want to thank all of our viewers for coming to Sagionic 1027
Yes,
today.
thank you.
And until next time, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon thee. Blessings. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Shawn.